The South African government recently authorized a major security shift. They are officially deploying the military. The South African National Defense Force will now operate directly alongside domestic police. The stated goal is to safeguard the national economy and secure critical infrastructure from ongoing domestic threats. But sending armed soldiers into domestic spaces failed to reassure the public. Instead, it triggered an immediate, visceral wave of national outrage and digital protest. At the center of this backlash is a surge of historical imagery. Across social media, citizens began sharing a decades-old black and white photograph of peaceful protesters from the anti-apartheid struggle. Citizens are pairing this historical photograph with a specific, chilling modern caption: "It's our turn now." Alongside the photo, users are spreading a quote widely attributed to former President Nelson Mandela. The text instructs citizens that if a future democratic government fails to govern effectively, they must resist it in the exact same way they fought the apartheid regime. This viral trend signals a growing willingness to judge the current leadership by the same metrics of accountability once used against their former oppressors. The military deployment serves as a band-aid over a state apparatus that is failing across multiple sectors. The first driver is economic. South Africa faces severe stagnation and staggering youth unemployment, leaving an entire generation largely disenfranchised. This is compounded by a breakdown in border management, where the state's inability to control physical crossings has led to significant friction over unmanaged illegal immigration. Furthermore, deep, pervasive corruption has systematically stripped civil institutions of their resources and crippled standard law enforcement capabilities. When standard civil governance fails to this degree, the state turns to the militarization of domestic policy. The army gets called in because the normal tools of a functioning society no longer work. Stationing soldiers at domestic facilities broadcasts a critical failure of the social contract. It shows a reality where normal governance has effectively ceased to function. While the government relies on the threat of military force to maintain order, the public has retaliated with the imagery of peaceful, organized civil resistance. The original UDF photograph depicted a vulnerable public holding the line against a heavily armed authoritarian regime that used force to suppress its citizens. By repurposing the ruling party's own liberation history, protesters maximize the insult to the current leadership. Whether Nelson Mandela actually spoke the exact words circulating online matters less than the moral authority the quote provides. It grants the digital protesters a sense of historical mandate. This shows that a country's founding struggles act as an ideological arsenal. Citizens will reactivate these symbols the moment they feel their leaders have lost their mandate. The erosion of public confidence carries immediate consequences for the real-world economy. As public trust erodes, it creates domestic policy uncertainty, which inevitably leads to investor hesitancy and capital flight. When foreign markets see military guards protecting basic infrastructure, they view it as a sign of severe instability. Capital requires predictability. A state that must rely on the army to maintain basic economic activity is inherently unstable. This crisis ultimately flows back to the central seat of South African governance. The backlash over the military deployment indicates that the post-apartheid grace period for the current ruling class has ended. The very historical ideals used to build modern South African democracy have now become the weapon its citizens use to hold it accountable.